I'm about to make a public statement on behalf of Feminine Healing Ministries regarding our policy on transgender women in our ministry. And I'll be reading from something that I've written to help keep me clear and concise. I thought that maybe I would never need to make this post, and haven't because I don't believe we need any more people speaking on this topic in order to fulfill our personal need to just be heard and seen in our emotionally charged ideas of justice, especially when those opinions are only halfway thought through. But due to a series of life catalysts and invitations, I need to make a clear statement about FHM's policies regarding transgender women and how we see it best to support transgender people, their healing, and their rights. I feel sad to share this because I know that there will be some women that I deeply care about that will be shocked or outraged by this statement and may even want to pull out of our ministry and our ordination school. To that which I say, I love you, and I will still love you even if we don't stand together in this matter. I hope that we can take our positions with appropriate measures to protect our personal boundaries and stand for what we each believe in peace. Before I share our official position and why, I want to state that while considering which direction to take, I took an anonymous poll of our ordination school students to which I was unsure of the responses I would receive. And to my surprise, these were the outcomes. 1 out of 10 women stood for trans women being a part of women's only spaces. FHM is a women's only space at this time. And another 1 out of 10 were mixed or neutral on the matter, leaving 8 out of 10 women with a strong opinion against trans women being included in women's only spaces. This statement today is to let you know that I stand with the 80%, and FHM does not allow transgender women into any of our women's only spaces. And I hope you'll take the time to hear why, as I have deeply listened to the other side too. There have been a few circumstances that have brought the need for this video to my attention, to which I still wasn't going to make a public statement, but in the recent polling of my community, I've had members of our school come forward with an issue around our current guideline of not allowing trans women. And this public statement serves to make my and our position clear in one place with full context, so that the communication of where I stand and how I see it appropriate to support transgender people is not misunderstood. This statement is to discuss the reasoning behind our protocol and why we believe this protocol is actually in support of transgender people and not against them. No one wants to say it because no one wants to listen to the whistleblowers. Not many want real thought-out solutions. They want to be justified and often to argue. Remember when COVID happened and God forbid you said you didn't think the vaccine that was killing people and unborn children of pregnant women was a good idea. But if you just came out and said that you don't support the vax or believe in the mask, you were told that you don't care about the sick and dying or that you're a bad person. Well, my loves, trans rights supporters are doing a lot of that same thing to those that are attempting to provide new lenses of information. Are you willing to listen, or are you only willing to die on the hill for the sake of justice? I, just as much as you, want to help and have justice for all human beings on this planet. If I come out and say I don't believe men and women are the same, and I don't believe trans women being in women's only spaces, believe in trans women belong in women's only spaces, then I'm told that I don't care about transgender people, that I don't see their experiences as valid and worthy of understanding and support. I'm here to tell you today that it simply isn't that black and white. I feel passionate about helping trans people because I'm devoted to helping all people on the planet find healing and reconciliation with God that they need. Transgender people's experiences are real, they're important, and they need our meaningful attention and participation and support. Let's start with a positive thing to be recognized about this entire movement. It's that we are no longer suppressing the deep feelings of those that are in conflict with their gender, which allows us to see just how deep of an issue this really is. We're being open about the reality of how many are experiencing this. We see the problem and we have to find a solution now. To find the solution, we have to understand what is happening to cause the issue and what the best way forward is for healing. I believe our current understanding of why there are so many trans people and how we can support them needs a complete overhaul. And this overhaul is in support of them and all of us, not in a lack of support or empathy. So I want to start with a recent personal experience that I've had. A few weeks ago, I joined a women's circle that was supposed to be exclusively women and centered around initiating deeper into our gnosis with God. There was a trans woman in that room, a dynamic that was not previously communicated upon joining the program. The circle was one of vulnerability and safety built in the context of being among women and women only, a distinction that changes the dynamics of how a woman shares her thoughts and her inner world without the presence of the opposite sex. We all know that there's a reason for separate men's and women's spaces, both to nurture the nature of the qualities of that sex and create safety of shared experience among that sex. In this particular program, there was even a separate circle for men. And my assumption for that is because there is a shared collective understanding that men and women have inherent differences in our gifts, our needs, our life initiations, and our experiences that relate to the biological design we were created in. I went into this circle with the assumption that I would be in a cultivated space of women. My experience of that moment in realizing a transgender woman who is clearly in a biologically male body was present was that my body tightened, my hairs stood up on the back of my neck, and as an instinct, I knew I was no longer among only women. In the same way as if a man walked into any space of vulnerability that is supposed to be women's only, the women's restroom, a locker room at the gym, or a women's only therapy group. For the same reason that my energy would shift if, say, my uncle walked into the room while I'm having a girls' night, or if my brother walked in while having a deep dive conversation with my mom, our conversations would change, our relationship to the environment would change. Women change when men are in the space. I share this story as a way to communicate the fundamental reality that men and women are not the same. I could state a million facts to back this claim, but I don't need to. Look at the biological world around you, which is God. We are not the same, and that is beautiful. As I'm sitting here recording this video, I'm looking out at my front lawn, and I'm even watching my 3-year-old son. And my son, even before understanding and being given the identity through the way that I parent him, that he is male, I can observe real fundamental differences in his orientation to life that are very different from the little girls that I observe. If you are someone that takes the opposing position, I know we at least agree on this part, because if men and women were the same, then there would be no need for a man to become a woman and a woman to become a man. The fact that we're even discussing rights for transgender people means that we inherently agree that there are fundamental differences among the sexes. My first question to you is, what are those differences? And why are we so focused on fighting for the right to resist that which we inherently are, instead of fighting for the healing that would allow transgender people to be in allowance and acceptance of that which we inherently are? When I ask for healing from God, I ask for support in helping me accept, embrace, and see through a new lens that which I cannot change. I'm aware that there are things in my life that I am not able to change. I do not ask for the allowance to make things as I temporarily wish them to be. It is a biological fact that even with a sex change and artificial hormones, we cannot change our biological identity to be synonymous with those born of that identity, no matter how we dress, how we behave, or how we feel. If what I'm beginning to allude to isn't clicking, please stick with me, because I believe I have an important point to make in standing up for transgender people. And so, I want to ask you, I want you guys to think, if we are not the same, what is it that makes us different? And is what makes us different our own decision, based on what we personally would prefer, based on what we feel? I don't make the following comparison lightly, and I know how serious what I'm about to say is. There have been times in my life where I have felt suicidal. I have been alive, a truth given to me from birth, but throughout my life, there were environmental circumstances and internal conflicts that made me feel strongly that I should not be alive. Though my experiences were real and my feelings deeply valid and understandable, should I have acted on that impulse to make myself different, to make myself dead? Because I felt suicidal, should I have killed myself? I hope you all said no to that question, and I'm sure many of you can relate to that experience. But of course, it's my right and my choice to die. Every person has been given that freedom and power to choose. But if God has made me alive, why would suicide, this is a question for you to answer, why would suicide not be the answer to depression and pain? Yet, we justify self-mutilation and gender transition as the answer to an internal conflict with our birth-given sex. To get this out of the way quickly, FHM has no problem or issue with women in same-sex relationships attending our women's spaces, but I'll speak more on that in a moment. For quick context on my life, and to dismantle the argument that I must be super conservative or brainwashed by the patriarchy or in this trad culture revival, I grew up without a father. I attended a very liberal school where I trained in the performing arts, so I was surrounded by very beautifully rebellious women testing the normative narrative around what it means to be a woman. I myself had a season of being gay and enjoying same-sex exploration. I am not disgusted by non-heteronormative behavior. I am not offended by trans people, nor do I have transphobia. If you know me, you know I am the first to speak up for dogmatic nonsense in all presentations of it. I have also spent a good deal of time in places of study around sexual addiction, sexual orientation, and the causes of sexuality development because of sexual dysfunction that affected my family. I'm not an expert in the field, but I do have more understanding than most in the specific field of unpacking why people present as heteronormative, homosexual, bisexual, and transgender. What I have learned in that space is that healing is not possible without de-shaming what we have become and why we've made the choices that we've made. I've also learned that we can pretty much track reasons why we have developed our sexuality and our sexual identity in the ways that we have. There's 100% of the time a reason why we've developed the way that we have. Transgender people do not need to be shamed, so let me just make that clear. If you know me, you know I don't assume a one-size-fits-all polarized position politically or religiously, and I do my best to form my own opinions from a space of deep thought and contemplation with God, not hopping on any bandwagon. So I'm certainly not on the bandwagon of opposing transgender people. Nothing in the world is without nuance, absent of compassion, or existing in black and white, right or wrong. However, in my personal experience, gender identity is not a choice, but a reality that we can either be in approval of or disapproval of. What we are at birth is a physical reality up to that which created us, and that is not dogmatic. It is not oppressive, and it is not dogmatic. It is biology, it is nature, it is God, and it is not a mistake. I do not look to a book for my understanding of God. I look to God. And because God is manifested as our natural world in full omnipresence, I look to understanding our natural world to understand God. Right or wrong, I observe in nature sexual pleasure being experienced among same sex. Not procreation, but definitely sexual pleasure among animals and humans. However, nothing in nature suggests that one can change their biological sex. So we'll talk more about this in a second, but this is the primary reason why FHM has a full allowance and none of my business when it comes to women in same-sex relationships, but we're here to help women get the support that they need if they want support around things like that. But we're in full acceptance of women in same-sex relationships, whether my personal opinion is that it's right or wrong. I don't believe that there's a right and wrong to it. But the difference in women in same-sex relationships and women who are transgender, you can't lump LGBTQ in one group because they're not the same. I don't see anything in nature that suggests one can change one's biological sex. What do we observe? So I want to ask you, what do we observe as a collective are the consequences of attempting to take over the natural world to make it our own? Transgender people are not wrong, not even a little bit. And that is the key. We need to be acknowledging just how not wrong they are, just how perfect they are, and helping them re-identify with that which they are, instead of further pushing them into dissociative behavior by validating and celebrating and encouraging it. If I have a client in front of me that is dissociative from being human, I don't tell her she's a starseed alien. I tell her it makes sense that she's having that experience, and then I do everything I can to help her come home to her human body. What are the consequences of making right what is fundamentally not reality? God does give us choices, but I don't see where God gave us the choice to choose our gender. This being said, while I do not support transgender women to be among women's only spaces, I do support transgender women. Let me paint this picture. I care about people who are suicidal, but that doesn't mean I support them hurting themselves or subjecting them to the hands of others to something, say, shock therapy. I care about children who are sick, but I don't support 60 vaccines before the age of 12. I care about birthing women, but I don't support the overmanagement of birth with unnecessary interventions that backfire and harm women. Not supporting harmful solutions to real human problems doesn't mean that I don't care about those people or those problems. In the same way, I support people suffering with gender identity conflict, but I don't support the solution of becoming transgender. I don't support self-mutilation, and I don't support hijacking their biology more than it's already suffering. I don't support systems of indoctrination if I don't see those systems actually helping people heal. In fact, I've taken a personal vow and devotion in my life to call out systems of indoctrination if they are hurting people more than they are helping people heal. I have not seen a single case of becoming transgender as the solution for people suffering in this way to resolve these conflicts, traumas, and psychological, biological issues. This is the truth, and I say this not to put transgender people down, but to make a statement that this is an indicator that we are not actually supporting these people in the way that they actually need. And from what I can see with the current life experience and observations that I have, it is because we are placing a Band-Aid on top of a gaping wound that needs a much different approach to treatment and healing. So what I'm saying is not that transgender people shouldn't be loved or de-shamed. I'm saying that the solution of sex change or identity change should not be encouraged or made normalized. If I had a public co-ed ministry, I would not reject trans people from coming to our spaces. But in a women's only space, that line needs to be drawn. I support helping transgender women heal by encouraging them to be in healthy relationships with men to help them heal what has made them disidentify with being male. And I support transgender men by encouraging them to be in healthy relationships with women to help them heal what has made them disidentify with being a woman. We need leaders skilled in trauma healing, biological living through lenses such as German New Medicine, with skills in helping people heal at the root of their dissociation, which often happens in very early childhood, to help trans people unpack in a different way and help them come back to their nature, help them come back to themselves. Now, I'll be brash for a moment. There are people on this planet born intersex, either with two sexual parts or unidentifiable sexual characteristics. And I think we should save the transgender rights fight for them. Not for the boy whose dad said he was a loser and decided as a teen he was better with the girls, and not for the woman that never had the environment to actually feel safe as a woman. That is the root of why FHM is taking the official position to not allow transgender women into our women's only spaces. I believe it is not only oppressive to the work that the women are doing in these spaces, but also a great disservice to transgender women, aka men, who would only be taken further into the wrong direction in their healing. To complete this statement, I want to make a quick note on same-sex relationships among women because I know this question arises in this conversation. FHM does have a full allowance of biological women into our work, independent of her choices in sexuality and relationships. I will not make a statement today on whether I believe this is right or wrong or what I have seen to be the root of same-sex orientation. What matters is that any healing a woman needs among women is appropriate to do among other biological women. Sexual orientation does not conflict with women healing with women. Neither transgenderism nor same-sex attraction is wrong or right. This is not a wrong or right conversation. This is a discussion on how we can best support those that need healing and how we can create safe spaces to do that. My final statement is that I am responsible for the safety of the spaces for women I create. There are certain protocols we hold to ensure that our community is healthy and capable of holding space for others. I do not ordain biological men, and I do not ordain biological women that are actively disowning their fundamental reality. In the same way that I don't ordain women who are actively in drug addiction or causing harm to themselves or others. It is a policy of safety and well-being for all involved. And to those that support trans women as women instead of men with a conflict around their gender, I say this with love because I know your desire to support trans women and speak up for them comes from a need to protect and stand for those who seem to be oppressed. But I say this, a conflicted man who believes he is a woman is a symptom of whatever internal issue he is experiencing. But a healthy woman that validates a man in his feeling that he should be a woman instead is not a healthy woman at all. Woman to woman, why are you okay with men wanting to be a woman and being in a space that is meant just for you? To be a woman and to be with other women is a great gift and a blessing. Please don't take that special privilege of an identity away from yourself or from the women around you. My final statement is that love is not always about validation. If my sister is in an abusive relationship, sometimes my job is to listen and support her in de-shaming her. Sometimes love looks like honesty delivered compassionately and telling her I think what's best for her is to leave. My point is that love doesn't always look like permissiveness. Love is the truth delivered kindly. I hope this makes our position crystal clear, and I hope there can be peace and respect among us in the differences we have in our approach to helping transgender people and all people heal. If any of my students have questions or need to discuss anything with me, you are more than welcome to contact me. And that's it. Thank you.